Our next new board member interview is with Alida Camp. Alida, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Ms. Camp is a mediator and an arbitrator. She specializes in entertainment, art, construction, commercial, employment, and securities cases. She's also a mediator for the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York, the New York Supreme Court, and numerous other organizations. She holds a law degree with honors from Columbia University and is a member of the bar of both New York and California. She has organized and presented programs on mediation and arbitration at bar associations, law firms, continuing legal education seminars, and at too many other organizations to name here, as well as at Columbia University Law School and New York Law School. Prior to her work in dispute resolution, Ms. Camp produced 7 feature films for the legendary filmmaker Roger Corman. She was his vice president of business and legal affairs. She was named an entertainment industry power mediator by the Hollywood Reporter. Very cool. Alida, welcome.
Thank you.
And I apologize for summarizing such an extensive resume in a few paragraphs. Maybe starting, you could give viewers a brief explanation of the difference between mediation and arbitration.
Arbitration is where I act like a judge and make a decision about who's right and who's wrong, who's the winner and the loser. In mediation, the mediator, me, sits down with the parties and helps them come to their own resolution. They decide what they could live with, and they decide what they can't, and they make their own agreement.
So one has a winner and a loser, the other one has 2 sort of winners and...
Theoretically, a win-win situation. People have hugged me and kissed me and cried at the ends of mediations because they're so happy that they've come to a resolution.
Mm-hmm. One of the key roles community boards have is a bridge between residents and businesses in the district and higher levels of city and state government. That sounds a lot like mediation in one sense. In your short time on the board, do you see parallels between your work in dispute resolution and what we do as a board?
It seems that there's rarely one side that's absolutely 100% correct, and coming to some kind of meeting of the mind, some kind of situation where both sides have their interests fulfilled to a degree is critical to the running of a city. And so I do think that mediation can come in very handy. It helps people and entities, organizations realize what their interests are, and it helps to achieve them.
How did you decide you wanted to serve on the community board?
I think Gail Brewer had sent out an email inviting applications for community board positions. I am passionate about this city. I grew up in the Bronx. I lived in Michigan and Los Angeles for a time and came back to New York after years of nagging my husband. And there are things about New York and its changes that concern me. And I want to see New York preserved as a vibrant, intelligent, demanding, diverse city that it is.
I'm curious, if you can discuss past cases, or to the extent that you can, what was the most challenging one you worked on?
I think a lot of cases are challenging where there's a very personal interest in a resolution, where there's a lack of trust on the other side. But I had a case with 2 brothers where they both wanted different things out of the mediation, and the opposing side had a tendency to be very let's just say emotionally involved, and the case didn't resolve. It was very, very challenging. I think it should have, because I think it would have really benefited, and both brothers had interest in public service and in doing good that they would have been able to focus on had the case been resolved. It ended up going to litigation.
Mm-hmm. That's what happens if it doesn't...
Yes, in most instances.
Was there one that was really the most interesting case?
I think they're all interesting. I've learned a lot about different kinds of businesses. I like to talk to people. I've learned a lot about different people and their lives and in helping them achieve what's important to them. So I find it an extremely gratifying field of work. And when people do hug and kiss me and cry, and I see their emotional interest in having a resolution, it's extremely rewarding. On the other hand, when cases don't resolve, I go home kicking myself, wondering what I could have done better.
So then, like a judge who has to handle a civil case, you have to know as much about the civil litigation and contract law and the business
Not so much about the law, although that's really important,
About the
but more
business
about
itself?
how the business runs, because what mediation can do is deliver a creative solution. So if you had an issue with your dry cleaner, for instance, the dry cleaner might offer you $10 for a shirt that you wore for 2 years, but which has a lot of meaning, and you wear it for very special occasions. And instead of the $10, you could work out a resolution where maybe you get free dry cleaning for a while, or maybe he sends you to a tailor that he knows at a discount, or maybe he provides you with a shirt when he goes to a different city and is able to bring you back something, or some connection here. So it doesn't have to be a financial resolution, which is what arbitration and litigation leads to. It could be any kind of creative solution that the parties can think of, from credits on movies to discounts in future to being put on lists for future work. And so therefore the parties can really get what they want or what they're interested in.
The movies is a perfect segue to asking you. I've got to ask, I'm a movie buff. I find it fascinating that you produced films with Roger Corman. What was it like working with I mean, he's a giant. His movies were B-roll, but famous. His production, the people that came out of his studio are the biggest names in Hollywood.
He's justifiably important in Hollywood, and it was fascinating and fun to work with him. He's an intelligent guy with a great eye for talent, but what he gave us was a lot of freedom. For the filmmakers, the writers, as long as you had the requisite elements of sex, blood, violence, one or more of those, he gave you a lot of freedom, and that was a gift. As long as the camera moved and the dailies that he saw were good, he let you go, and that was an enormous benefit for us. I loved it. I really did. It was the only time I was happy in LA was working on a movie for Roger.
I would guess The Little Shop of Horrors is probably his best known film.
One of them. It predates my time there, but then
that's the 60s.
Yeah, with Jack Nicholson,
yes.
I think it was his first feature. Turning that into a bigger, I mean, someone else came along, bought the rights, and turned it into a bigger movie, which then became a musical, gave it a lot of life. But so it is very well known, but he's made a lot of movies in the genres that were popular at the time, and given the low budgets that we had and the short shooting schedule, pre-production, post-production, I think he turned out a lot of very valuable films. Not in the sense of maybe the AFI 100, but movies that gave people a start in Hollywood, which then led to those AFI 100. It makes me think of Martin Scorsese.
Who was one of...
Big Boxcar Bertha, I think. Boxcar Bertha, I think, was one of his first.
Have you got a sense of what committees interest you? The way we work in the community board is dividing up into committees.
I think I'm interested in the Landmarks Committee because I think preserving the history, the architecture of New York is essential to its success as a city, and I'm very interested in landmarks, architecture, preservation, and I think also street life, because I think it's essential to having a vibrant community is having street life.
Now, for listeners that don't know, Street Life is the committee that looks at liquor license applications, outdoor cafe and enclosed outdoor cafe permits, newsstands. It's a lot of mediation there.
There is, because there are a lot of diverse interests and divergent interests. One dramatic difference with Los Angeles is the opportunity for people to walk, to look at things, to interact with each other. One of the things that make me passionate about this city.
Well, your passion is welcome. We've run out of time. I thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to having you with us on the board.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure to be here.